Do you think dolls are just innocent playthings? What if I told you that one of horror's most recognizable characters wasn't simply born from a screenwriter's imagination, but from something far more disturbing? The truth behind the murderous Bride of Chucky has been deliberately obscured, hidden in sealed records and dismissed as folklore. But the evidence is there, if you look closely enough. Most assume Tiffany Valentine is nothing more than fiction, a character created to sell movie tickets. They're wrong. The true story is far more terrifying than anything Hollywood could invent. In 1958, in the small manufacturing town of Hackensack, New Jersey, police responded to a domestic disturbance at 411 Elm Street. What they discovered would haunt them for decades. The Valentine family home stood eerily quiet when officers arrived. Too quiet. The front door was ajar. Inside, officers discovered the bodies of Harold and Margaret Valentine, their throats slashed with surgical precision. Their daughter, Tiffany, was nowhere to be found. The case file, still partially sealed to this day, describes a scene of methodical violence. Not frenzied, not emotional. Cold, calculated, precise. Blood spatter analysis indicated the killer took their time, moving deliberately between victims. Harold was killed first, while reading his evening newspaper. Margaret was found in the kitchen, a half-prepared dinner still on the counter. Neither had defensive wounds. They never saw it coming, but it's what investigators found in Tiffany's bedroom that truly disturbed them. A collection of dolls. Dozens of them, not arranged on shelves or displayed as normal collections would be. They were positioned throughout the room in tableaus depicting violent scenes, primitive crime scenes crafted by a disturbed mind. The police photos, briefly available in the county archives before being mysteriously removed in 1976, showed dolls with pins pushed through their plastic bodies, tiny nooses around miniature necks, doll heads removed and placed in meticulous circles. Detective Frank Morris wrote in his report, "In my 17 years of police work, I have never witnessed such a deliberate display of psychological disturbance. The Valentine girl requires immediate psychiatric evaluation upon apprehension." But Tiffany Valentine was never apprehended. She simply vanished. Age 16, blonde, petite, described by neighbors as unusually intense and oddly mature for her age. The manhunt lasted 3 months before being downgraded. By 1960, the case was considered cold. What the official records don't mention, what was deliberately omitted, were the witness statements. 3 separate neighbors reported seeing Tiffany Valentine standing motionless in her front yard at 3:17 a.m., hours after the estimated time of her parents' deaths. All 3 described her wearing a white nightgown, splattered with blood. All 3 described her smiling. Not one of them called the police until morning. When interviewed, each neighbor gave the same disturbing explanation for their silence. "I thought I was dreaming. She couldn't have been real. She looked like a doll." The investigation stalled. Tiffany Valentine became a ghost story. A local legend told to frighten teenagers. The Valentine house remained empty, the property tied up in legal complications. No relatives came forward to claim it. No one wanted it. It sat abandoned, windows gathering dust, paint peeling in the New Jersey weather. Locals crossed the street to avoid walking directly past it. Years later, 1967, Chicago, Illinois. A series of unusual murders baffled police. 6 victims over 4 months, all killed in their homes, all with the same signature, throats cut with surgical precision. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen. The only connection between victims? Each had recently purchased an antique porcelain doll from the same estate sale. Lead detective Raymond Sullivan noted something unusual about each crime scene. Every victim had a doll positioned near their body. Not the antique dolls they had purchased. These were different. Cheap plastic dolls with blonde hair. Each doll's face had been crudely altered with what appeared to be makeup. Red lipstick smeared across plastic lips. Dark eyeshadow roughly applied. The report described them as attempting to appear adult, even seductive, in a disturbing amateurish way. Sullivan made the connection to the Valentine murders, requesting the files from Hackensack PD. 2 days after receiving them, Sullivan disappeared. His car was found abandoned at a rest stop outside Gary, Indiana. The driver's seat was soaked in blood. His body was never recovered. The case files he had been reviewing vanished from the evidence room. The investigation was reassigned, redirected, and eventually closed, as unsolved. A pattern was emerging. Anyone who noticed the connection seemed to disappear. In 1970, criminology student Rebecca Chen wrote her thesis on what she called the Valentine pattern, ritualistic murders connected to dolls and childish obsessions. 3 weeks after submitting her work to the university, Chen was found dead in her apartment. Official cause of death: suicide. Her thesis disappeared from university archives. Her professor denied ever receiving it. When pressed by Chen's parents, he claimed he had never had a student by that name, despite her name appearing in class rosters and yearbooks. Someone was erasing the pattern. Someone was protecting a secret. Meanwhile, sightings continued. A woman matching Tiffany Valentine's description, petite, blonde, now in her late 20s but still described as having an unsettling, youthful appearance, was reported in connection with toy stores and doll manufacturers across the country. Security cameras at a Kansas City toy factory captured a blonde woman breaking in after hours in 1973. The footage, reviewed by night security, showed her wandering the assembly lines, touching the dolls' faces, talking to them. When guards arrived to investigate, she was gone. The security tape went missing the next day. The guard who viewed it was found in the factory parking lot, throat slashed, a blonde doll clutched in his lifeless hand. The pattern continued through the 1970s. Murders, always with the same signature, always with dolls positioned at the scene, always followed by missing evidence and derailed investigations. The few law enforcement officials who recognized the pattern learned to keep quiet. Those who didn't disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. In 1978, private investigator Jack Newberry began tracking the Valentine case independently after his sister became one of the victims in Denver. His journal, discovered in a storage unit in 1992 after his disappearance, documented a disturbing theory. Newberry believed Tiffany Valentine wasn't simply killing. She was searching for something, or someone. She moves from toy store to toy manufacturer to collector's shops, he wrote. She's looking for a specific doll. She believes this doll contains something she lost, something she needs. She speaks to these dolls as if they can understand her, as if they're alive. Newberry tracked her to a Good Guy doll manufacturing plant in New Hampshire. His journal entries become increasingly paranoid in these final pages. He describes being followed, watched. He believes Valentine knows he's tracking her. His final entry, dated November 9th, 1988, reads simply, "She's not alone anymore. She found him." 3 days later, the Good Guy doll factory experienced what official records call an industrial accident. A massive explosion destroyed the east wing of the facility, killing 7 workers. Security footage, partially recovered from the damaged surveillance system, showed a blonde woman entering the factory after hours. She wasn't alone. The grainy footage shows her carrying what appears to be a doll, a male doll with red hair. The official investigation cited a gas leak as the cause of the explosion. The security footage was sealed by court order and never made public. The detective leading the investigation resigned unexpectedly 2 weeks later and moved out of state, leaving no forwarding address. For several years, the pattern went cold. No murders matching the signature. No sightings of the mysterious blonde woman. Some investigators speculated that Tiffany Valentine had died in the factory explosion. They were wrong. She was evolving. In 1991, police departments in 6 different states began receiving strange reports. Violent crimes, not just murders now, but armed robberies, carjackings, assaults, committed by what witnesses described as a small person, or more disturbingly, a doll come to life. These reports were uniformly dismissed as witness hysteria or hallucination. The officers who took them seriously were reprimanded or reassigned. But the patterns were unmistakable to those paying attention. The crimes were becoming more public, more brazen. And now there were always 2 perpetrators described, a female and a male, both unusually small, both described as moving in jerky, unnatural ways, both leaving behind signature taunts, a lipstick kiss mark on mirrors at crime scenes from her, knife carvings with distinctive patterns from him. Former detective Carlos Ramirez, who had worked the Chicago murders back in the 60s, came out of retirement to independently investigate. His self-published monograph, The Valentine conspiracy appeared briefly in 1993 before being withdrawn from publication due to what the small press called legal concerns. The few copies that circulated contained photographs comparing knife wounds from murders across 4 decades, all with the identical pattern, all matching the wounds that killed Tiffany Valentine's parents in 1958. "These aren't copycat killings," Ramirez wrote. "This is the same killer, unchanging across decades. Either Valentine found a protege who perfectly mimics her technique, or something impossible is happening, something no one wants to acknowledge." Ramirez was found dead in his home 3 weeks after publication. Official cause of death: heart attack. The medical examiner noted only that his facial expression showed extreme terror, and that rigor mortis had fixed his finger pointing toward the closet. When officers checked the closet, they found nothing unusual. Just a child's doll with blonde hair, which they assumed belonged to his grandchildren. The doll was not logged into evidence. It disappeared. By the mid-1990s, the pattern had become impossible for certain authorities to ignore, even as official investigations were repeatedly shut down. A specialized unit within the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit began collecting data unofficially. The agents called themselves the Toy Box, a gallows humor reference to their focus. They worked after hours without authorization, gathering evidence that their superiors refused to acknowledge. What they discovered was chilling. The Valentine killings followed a pattern tied to doll manufacturing and distribution. New murder sprees would begin shortly after limited edition dolls were released, or after toy companies changed ownership, or after large collections of vintage dolls were sold at estate auctions. The killings would move geographically, following the doll distribution. In 1996, 4 members of the unofficial FBI unit traveled to a doll convention in New Orleans, following their pattern analysis. All 4 disappeared from their hotel rooms overnight. Their belongings were left behind. Their rental car remained in the parking lot. The convention center's security cameras showed nothing unusual, except for a 3-minute period of static at 3:17 a.m. When the footage resumed, nothing appeared changed. But the agents were never seen again. The hotel room showed no signs of struggle. The only unusual element noted by the crime scene technicians: a distinct scent of burnt plastic and the faint impression of small footprints in the hallway carpet, as if a child had stepped in something wet and walked through. But there were no children registered on that floor. The remaining members of the unofficial FBI unit were disbanded, reassigned to different departments across the country. Their files were confiscated. Their investigations labeled unauthorized and wasteful. Their careers stalled. The year 1998 marked a disturbing new chapter. Hollywood released a horror film featuring a murderous doll named Chucky and his bride, a character named Tiffany Valentine. The filmmakers claimed the character was fictional. They denied any knowledge of the real Tiffany Valentine or the decades of murders associated with her name. But the similarities were impossible to ignore for those who knew the true pattern. The question that haunted the few remaining investigators aware of the Valentine case: was this movie a coincidence or something more sinister? A deliberate attempt to fictionalize a real horror, to make any future evidence seem like the ravings of moviegoers with overactive imaginations. Former FBI analyst Diana Mitchell, one of the last members of the disbanded Toy Box unit, began researching connections between the film production company and the unsolved murders. Her research notes, shared with trusted colleagues, revealed something disturbing. 3 members of the film's production team had family connections to victims in the Valentine murder series. The screenwriter's aunt had been killed in Chicago in 1967. The producer's college roommate was one of the missing FBI agents. The director's father had worked at the Good Guy doll factory that exploded in 1988. When confronted privately, all 3 denied knowledge of these connections. All 3 claimed these were coincidences. All 3 became hostile and threatened legal action if Mitchell continued her investigation. 2 weeks after making these inquiries, Mitchell's apartment caught fire while she slept. Her body was recovered, badly burned. Fire investigators determined the blaze originated from a faulty electrical outlet in her living room, where a television had been left on, playing a VHS tape of the movie in question. The tape had melted in the heat, fusing with the VCR. What the official report doesn't mention is what Mitchell's neighbor told the responding officers before being discouraged from making a formal statement. She reported seeing two small figures leaving Mitchell's apartment shortly before the fire broke out. When pressed to describe them, she became confused, saying only, "They moved funny," like they weren't real people at all. Since the film's release, a disturbing trend has emerged. After each new movie in the franchise, a new cluster of murders occurs, mimicking the signature style of the Valentine killings from decades past. Law enforcement dismisses them as copycat killings inspired by the films, but the pattern remains consistent with murders that predated the movies by decades. More disturbing still are the reports from film sets. Production assistants on multiple sequels have reported dolls moving between takes when no one was touching them, props disappearing and reappearing in different positions. Strange laughter heard from empty rooms. These stories are dismissed as film set superstitions, publicity stunts, or crew pranks. But crew members who press the issue too firmly tend to leave production suddenly, sometimes disappearing altogether. In 2007, film student Jessica Wu began production on a documentary titled The Real Tiffany Valentine, after discovering newspaper clippings about the original 1958 murders. 3 weeks into filming, all of Wu's research materials and footage disappeared from her apartment. Her computer's hard drive was wiped clean. When she reported the break-in to police, they found no signs of forced entry. Nothing else was taken. Not her expensive camera equipment, not her cash, not her credit cards. Just everything related to Tiffany Valentine. Wu persisted, starting her research from scratch. 2 months later, she was found in her editing room, throat slashed, surrounded by doll parts arranged in a ritual circle. Security cameras showed no one entering or leaving the building. Her body was discovered by a classmate who reported seeing a message written in lipstick on the mirror. "Don't tell my story, I tell yours." The investigation went nowhere. Wu's death was eventually attributed to an unknown assailant, likely some deranged fan of the horror franchise taking things too far. Her research notes and any footage she had reconstructed vanished from police evidence within a week. The pattern continues to this day. After each film release, each television adaptation, each new piece of merchandise, the murders begin again. Different cities, different victims, same signature, same mysterious dolls left at crime scenes, same investigative dead ends. Those who notice the pattern and speak too loudly about it disappear. Their evidence vanishes. Their concerns are dismissed. Their deaths are explained away. The few who recognize the truth learn to stay quiet, to investigate in shadows, to share information only with those they absolutely trust. What's happening defies rational explanation. How could a teenage girl who disappeared in 1958 still be killing today? Unchanged, unaged. How could dolls move, kill, live? The logical mind rejects these possibilities. That's what makes the cover-up so effective. The truth is too impossible to believe. But consider this. The original Tiffany Valentine was obsessed with dolls. She created elaborate scenes of violence with them. What if she found a way to transfer herself into them? What if the dolls she's searching for, collecting, killing, what if they're vessels? What if she's not alone anymore? The doll collections of every Valentine victim have disappeared. The dolls at the crime scenes vanish from evidence rooms. The pattern suggests not just murder, but collection. Gathering. A family being built, one plastic body at a time. Reports from the few witnesses who survived encounters describe the dolls speaking, moving, exhibiting distinct personalities. The male doll, the one that appears after 1988, is described as aggressive, profane, impulsive. The female, Tiffany, is calculated, seductive, methodical. Together they're seeking something, building something, a family perhaps, a legacy. The most recent cluster of killings began in January 2024, following the announcement of yet another film in the franchise. 6 murders across 4 states. All victims had purchased collectible dolls from the film series. All were killed in the signature style, throats slashed with surgical precision. All had dolls positioned near their bodies. Not the collectibles they had purchased, but different dolls. Dolls with crude alterations, with added scars, with clothing made from scraps of the victim's own garments. Police found footprints at each scene. Small footprints that experts claimed belonged to either a very small adult or a child. The stride pattern was described as unusual and mechanical, as if something was mimicking human movement without fully understanding it. The most recent victim, Thomas Chambers of Portland, Oregon, was found just 3 months ago. His security system captured something the others hadn't: a brief glimpse of two small figures entering his home at 3:17 a.m. The footage is grainy, distorted by what appears to be electrical interference. But for 3 frames, you can clearly see them. 2 dolls moving independently. One blonde female in a wedding dress. One red-haired male in overalls. Both looking directly at the camera. Both smiling. The footage was confiscated by federal agents who refused to identify their department. The local police were instructed to close the case. The security company that maintained Chambers' system had its servers seized the following day. Every copy of the footage disappeared, except one. The clip circulated briefly on obscure internet forums before being systematically removed from every platform. Those who shared it reported strange phone calls afterward. Voices that sounded distorted, plastic, artificial, always with the same message: this isn't your story to tell. Their accounts were suspended. Their posts disappeared. Many of them stopped posting altogether. The few who persisted received packages in the mail, small boxes with no return address. Inside each box, a doll with its throat slashed and a note reading simply, "You're next." The pattern is accelerating. The killings are becoming more frequent. The dolls are becoming bolder, less concerned with concealing their impossible nature. It's as if they want to be seen now. They want their story told, but only on their terms, only in the way they control. What began with Tiffany Valentine in 1958 has evolved into something beyond human comprehension. Not just a killer, but a legend taking physical form. Not just a doll, but something living inside it, animating it, multiplying through it. I've spent years tracking this case, gathering evidence that disappears, interviewing witnesses who later recant their statements or disappear entirely. I've watched as authorities systematically erase any connection between murders spanning 7 decades. I've seen careers destroyed and lives ended when people get too close to the truth. Why am I telling you this now? Because the pattern suggests you're already part of it. You're watching this. You're learning their story. According to the pattern, that makes you a potential vessel, a potential victim, or perhaps, in their eyes, a potential family member. Have you purchased or owned dolls recently? Have you noticed them in positions you don't remember placing them in? Have you heard whispers at night, plastic scraping against surfaces, high-pitched laughter when you're alone? These are the warning signs, the harbingers of what's coming. The Valentine pattern shows that knowledge alone isn't enough to save you. Action is required. The few survivors of Valentine encounters report the same protective measure. They destroyed their dolls. All of them. Completely. By fire. But be warned. They need to be completely destroyed. Partial destruction only angers them. A police report from 2019 describes a San Diego family who attempted to dispose of a doll they believed was moving at night. They broke it apart and threw it in their trash. 3 days later, all 4 family members were found dead. Their throats slashed. The broken doll was reconstructed, sitting on the living room sofa, surrounded by other dolls taken from neighbors' homes. The truth about Tiffany Valentine isn't just some Hollywood backstory. It's an ongoing horror that authorities refuse to acknowledge, that evidence rooms can't contain, that rational minds struggle to accept. It crosses decades and defies explanation. It adapts and evolves. It watches and waits. And now, it knows you know. If you've watched this far, you're already involved. They can sense attention. They can feel when their story is being told. They're drawn to those who know about them. Type, "I see you, Tiffany," in the comments if you've made it to the end. Not to show me, to show them you're not afraid. They respect courage. They target fear. The dolls in your home right now, are they exactly where you left them? Are you certain? Perhaps you should check. But understand that once you start looking for the pattern, you become part of it. The true story behind Tiffany Valentine isn't finished. It's still being written in police reports that will disappear, in evidence that will vanish, in witnesses who will go silent, and perhaps, if you're not careful, in whatever happens to you next. They're collecting, building, growing their family. Sweet dreams. Check your doors. And whatever you do, watch your dolls before they start watching you.